Hi, Martin Walsh, answering Sociology, Module 8 questions. Number 1. Society has changed over the past decade, from style to language and even our environmental resources. Give an example of how social change has affected physical environment, population, innovation, diffusion, and mass media. So it's kind of hard for me to see one clear-cut example that changed them all. So I gave a couple examples per topic. Number 1 will be in today's context of social change, we see our physical environment changing daily, and it's not always in a good way. We see statues being removed, which, in my opinion, I have mixed feelings. I think they shouldn't be publicly displayed in an official state function if they are related to slavery or oppression, but at the same time, they shouldn't just be destroyed. We should move them to a museum or something, somewhere where people can still go look at them, learn about them, but at the same time, it's not like a public state condoned example of, slavery or oppression. Also, within this context is, in the social change movement, we see buildings being torched more recently than ever. Chaz in Seattle is a very good example of trying to drive out the police and then setting up an occupied zone, not allowing police officers in. But that right there is changing their physical environment just based on a social change that they're trying to affect. And sanctuary cities. I'll get into that one on the next portion, though. Population. Sanctuary cities again. This is an area where social change has, changed the landscape of what we deem acceptable. In these sanctuary cities, people that at one point, illegal immigrants, and now, don't get me wrong, everybody always gets all offended when somebody says illegal immigrant, but in all reality, it's just legally defining their immigration status. Not a race, not a creed, not a color, nothing. It is, are you legally in America or not? Now, sanctuary cities turn the blind eye to that, going as far as preventing federal agencies from affecting, extrication of illegals. And in that area, we'll see a population boom of people that, of immigrants not supposed to legally be here, because people are drawn to their similarities, they're drawn to their families. And when a family arrives in a sanctuary city and says, hey, I'm safe here, everybody else comes too. So you're going to have a population influx. Innovation. Social change has been very much centered around the death of George Floyd recently. However, in the last decade, we have seen companies like Axon make a huge name for themselves because of this very type of event. Police mishandling evidence, suspects, and traffic stops only to have their version of the story go unquestioned. That is where Axon thrives. It's a company that was originally founded by Taser International, and they developed the Square police officer body cam, and more importantly, the network that allows it to be uploaded and shared and maintained as like a chain of evidence. Diffusion. Music's a great example of diffusion, especially with the YouTube and whatnot. Rap has become so mainstream and diffused that there's no one clear targeted audience anymore. I mean, any age range, race, gender, it's not just for one group, of people anymore. Another one is that song that went really big, Despacito. Half the people that love that song have no idea what he's talking about, but they loved it. And that's diffusion of a culture throughout America. Let's see. Mass media. Social change has had a devastating effect on our mass media. There was a time when the news was only 30 minutes to an hour long, and they didn't have time to tell us what we should think or what their opinions on something are, or, you know, present a 1 or 2 minute news segment and then talk about, ooh, what this should have happened, or we think he's wrong for this, for half an hour. They were there to deliver the facts and let the American public decide for themselves. Now, in the days of the 24-hour news cycle, the president can make a 128 character tweet and they will spend 24 hours destroying every single word in there until their agenda is viewed as the morally right one. The other portion of this, Facebook, 100%, influx in opinionated newscasting. You have people that are too lazy to research anything for themselves. And it has also just literally destroyed journalistic integrity. I mean, there are more accounts online of purely false or opinion-based narratives masquerading as news versus actually reporting fact. And there was a time when a journalist was taught at all odds, or against all odds, you lay down the truth. And that hasn't been seen in years. Number two, sorry, this is long-winded. I always do this. Number two, the information revolution was and still is an important perspective in social change. In your opinion, how has it changed society? How has it changed society, and how do you feel it will change society in the future? So the information revolution, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It was said that equal access to information can change the world. It will help lift the chains of oppression off of, people that come from low-income areas. Because, if you think about it, years ago, if you have inner city, even today, I guess, inner city, they have a poor educational infrastructure. And then you go towards a more affluent suburb, you're going to have better teachers, better equipment, better schools, smaller class sizes. And then that alone will narrate their future success potential. And the internet was just everybody's dream when it first came out. Was now everybody's going to have access to the same amount of information. We're all going to know it all, and it should help even the playing field. But with that comes, you need to have not only the dedication and drive to want to better yourself, because as kids we're forced to go to school, but if you're going to an underserving school and you don't have the drive to go home and research stuff or learn or better yourself afterwards, it doesn't matter how much access you have to it. And the other problem is what I just spoke on, journalistic integrity, stuff like that. It is really just messed up how, I keep coming back to it, but Facebook, people get all their news, all their information, all their facts and resources off Facebook. And 99% of people don't know what they're talking about. If you look at, not picking on anybody, but you look at Bill Nye the Science Guy, who just seems like he knows everything about science. And you look at his actual resume, he's got a BS in, I think it's biology or something. And then you look at, what was it, Jean-Claude Van Damme? He's got like 4 master's degrees, Who's really the better scientific authority? But he's got the catchy name, Bill Nye the Science Guy, so we're going to believe him. So when you go online and you see, somebody put up something, the masks, that's a great one, Oh, well, masks are harboring, it's a breeding ground for bacteria. And then you turn around to somebody else saying, oh, no, this is totally wrong. You need to do it like this. Or the mask cut down on your oxygen levels in your system. And everybody always has these great ideas, but 90% of people are posting these random crap on Facebook. They don't know what they're talking about, and it's all about the convincement of the argument or where you're already leaning. They're just shoving you even further that way. One other thing, let's see. Technology has changed though. One really great aspect is that, you know, the 90s, if you wanted to have a voice and try to affect change or put your opinion out there or express anything, it was very hard to do that, you know? I mean, outside of being able to be on actual TV or be on the radio, you were pretty much voiceless. Nowadays, you know, you have people on Facebook that just reach out, network, grow their friends list, and now they have a voice, whether it be it over 500 people or 500,000. And their opinion can affect change much easier than before. Let's see. But yes, the biggest thing we need to fear is a misinformation revolution. And the last year has been more defining than any. There's so many examples of situations in which blatant lies are spread in hopes to further somebody else's idea or goal. One prime example was children in cages. If you remember from right when Trump was elected, there was this big campaign public push. When he came down tough on border security, there started to be a picture circulating the internet of children sleeping in cages at a detention center. And they're all blaming it on Trump. Look what Trump did. Look what Trump did. Turns out that photo was from 2015 during the Obama presidency. And that was his policy. But they are using that picture to spread misinformation and hate about Trump in order to affect change and try to get people to vote through their ideological preferences. All right, I need to hurry this up. Oh, let's see. Number 3, how has modernization changed many underdeveloped nations? Okay, healthcare is a big field with modernization. We can see doctors doing stuff like conducting consultations and assisting doctors in procedures from across the globe. And actually, right when I was typing this out and reading the book, I got on Google, and the first little line underneath, like the search bar, was, see how Google Maps has helped revolutionize blood delivery in Kenya. And it was basically, you have all these small hospitals, blood banks, and then delivery networks, and none of them were networked together. And this one woman was able to completely centralize the whole thing using Google Maps. And she was able to, within 10 to 12 months, I think it said, she was able to effectively cut down the delivery time of required blood from the blood bank to the hospital that needed it from 24 hours to 40 minutes, which is huge because you need the blood within the golden hour. And so by being able to use technology to network all these individual blood banks and then individual couriers and hospitals to one central network, she's saving hundreds of, if not thousands of lives a year. Okay, number 4, what types of social movements have occurred in history? When and why did they occur? So the types of social movements that have occurred are revolutionary movements, reform movements, resistance movements, and expressive movements. I'll just give you an example of each because, you know, there's hundreds of examples. When we see stuff like revolutionary movement, it's to affect a structural change, something large. So like America, the Revolutionary War, last year in China, actually Hong Kong. They were, trying to pull them back into China, mainland China, ahead of the 10-year amnesty period. And there was a massive revolt, If you remember the news stories, this is right before the swine flu came out. And if you remember the news stories, or college students fighting the police with bows and arrows and Molotov cocktails, and they were trying to effect revolution. Revolution against the Khmer Rouge, stuff like that. But yeah, our big one in our history is 1776, Revolutionary War. Reform movements, again, they're all over the world, but our big one is the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King. Nothing can beat the iconic image of him marching through Washington, D.C. That was huge movement and a huge time for our country. Resistance movements, they are, definitely a smaller fashion, and they can be either good or bad. Our book references 1950s and the Southern KKK movement, trying to resist the integration and everything. What I had chose was World War II, 1940s, France, as Hitler swept across Europe. French armies were obviously decimated, but it's like any insurgency. People not in uniform are very hard to distinguish, Short of rounding up every military-age male, you're not going to be able to police it. And everybody has this, like, dire, need to protect their home country. So when you see, Hitler rolling through, you're going to sit back and say, okay, well, just let him pass on by. I ain't going to try and stand in front of the entire blitzkrieg. But then we will operate like an insurgent cell, small moving attacks, this and that. And the French French resistance forces were actually imperative in securing our landing sites along the beaches of Normandy, along with Operation Market Garden and our drops behind enemy lines. I was a paratrooper, so that was kind of my thing. And they were also imperative in delivering intelligence information to the Americans. Another big thing was, since they already had supply networks in place and intelligence organizations, combat units, basically, they were able to take our advanced parties. So Americans would send in special forces in small little rafts, stuff like that, to infiltrate and plan and prepare. So that way when our landing forces came, they knew where to go, how the enemy was going to attack. And so their resistance movement was massively vital to our success in World War II. And the last one is an expressive movement. Now, these don't always typically seek to drive change, like social change, but a lot of things, like our book really likes to highlight the religious type of expressive movements. But the one I wanted to highlight was Pride Month. Most, whenever you see a specific, like, LGBTQ stuff, it's always about, we need change, we need acceptance, we need this. Pride, especially like the parades downtown, that is not about affecting change. That is about being proud of who you are and expressing your love for each other and stuff. It's not, it's, granted, everything is a movement for change, but that is definitely more of an expression of happiness and pride in themselves. So those are my examples. Thank you.